Chapter 79, Gathering of Silk Pants. Ling Family Courtyard. Ling Tian was seated in the secret chambers silently while reading through the news being sent back from all around. There were a few of these news which drew his attention the most. The third young master of the Nangong family, one of the 6 great families, set off half a month ago to the Yang family for a marriage proposal. The son of the family head of the Zhou family, Zhou Zhenyu, had paid a visit to the Dongfang family of the 6 great families. Author's note: while there are 8 large aristocratic families with equal status, Ling Tian was used to removing both the Ling and Yang family. He ignored the Ling family because he felt that the strength of the Ling family was just incomparable to the other 6 families. As for the Yang family, Ling Tian did not even have them in his sights. The news which made Ling Tian the most interested was this: the crown prince of the Northern Wei family proposed a marriage to the Yu family, marrying the young princess of the Yu family as the first wife of the crown prince. However, he was rejected. The princess of the Yu family decided to explore the continent to broaden her horizons. She had already set off from the Northern Wei and her whereabouts were unknown. As Ling Tian saw this piece of news, he could not help but fall into deep consideration. No matter how big the Yu family was, they were still in the territory of the Northern Wei, under the jurisdiction of the Northern Wei Emperor. Just what was the Yu family relying on to reject the crown prince's proposal? Furthermore, the proposal was made personally by the emperor. This Yu family definitely isn't simple. The final phrase, "whereabouts were unknown," made Ling Tian extremely interested. Ling Tian would naturally know just how large the information net of his subordinates were. Even with such a thorough search, they still gave him the report of whereabouts were unknown. Just what did this mean? There can only be 2 explanations to such a situation. First, the princess of the Yu family did not come out at all, and exploring the continent was nothing but an excuse. Second, the might of the Yu family was far above Ling Tian. Thus, Ling Tian isn't able to find out about anything. What a Yu family! Ling Tian thought calmly, since they have the guts to reject the proposal by the emperor of the Northern Wei Empire, why would they bother finding an excuse? The only possibility is the latter explanation. Since the Yu family's princess is out and the sky-bearing empire is the most happening at this moment, it is extremely likely for her to be in the sky-bearing empire. Ling Tian began to smile. It seems that things are getting more and more interesting. It seems that this is really a good opportunity. Ling Tian gave a profound smile. If the princess of the Yu family really came to the sky-bearing empire, I will be able to catch a small glimpse of the Yu family's true strength from her and her followers. This was something extremely beneficial to his next step. Ling Jia looked at Ling Tian's expression secretly and gave his own view. If young noble is able to bring the princess of the Yu family to his bedroom ... our possible enemy would become our ally. With regards to this opinion, Ling Tian dismissed it with a smile. If she did not meet his expectations, she will have to stand by the side even if she was the daughter of the Jade Emperor. While it is important to rule to heavens, his own love story must not be sacrificed. Of course, if the princess of the Yu family is up to his expectations, he would not mind either. 1. The most important day had finally arrived. Early in the morning, Ling Tian was dragged off his bed by Chu Tinger, summoning 6 maids with a wave of her hands and dressing Ling Tian up all over. Only after 2 hours did they stop under the satisfied gaze of Chu Tinger. By the time Ling Tian left his room, he felt as though a great burden was off his shoulders and he could finally see the daylight again. Before he left the mansion, Chu Tinger caught up to him and said, "Tanner, you can choose anyone you want. But, you better not choose Jinfeng or Jiayu, the 2 princesses. Your mother does not wish to ask the impossible from the emperor." Ling Tian agreed as he quickly summoned a few guards behind him and left the house as though he was escaping. He did not even bother waiting for Wang Bo, getting on his horse and riding away. It was as though a monster would come out from his house at any time. He was like Jade, his horse-like dragon. Ling Tian was originally extremely suave already. Together with the fact that he dressed up intentionally, he was extremely outstanding. Along the way, he attracted the many curious gazes from the people on the streets. But the moment they saw that it was the infamous young noble Ling, they all quickly looked away in fright. A full 2 hours of dressing up. My goodness! Ling Tian cried out in his heart. For someone who would only take 3 minutes to wash up every day, the 2 hours of dressing up was akin to hell. Behind him, the 4 guards looked at the gates of the mansion in doubt. Just what is wrong with this usually fearless young noble? Don't tell me it's because of how excited he is because of the gathering of beauties in the palace? They all gave a weird laughter and quickly chased him with their horses. Every time Ling Tian came to the imperial palace, he felt extremely uncomfortable. Can this even be called an imperial palace? Ling Tian wished that he can bring the emperor back to the 21st century with him to let him take a look at the Forbidden City. That is called an imperial palace. What can this be considered? While it had a large land area, Ling Tian felt that it was not even comparable to the Ling family courtyard which he constructed. As he dismounted from his horse in front of the palace, Ling Tian instructed his guards to follow the palace guards to the side yard. Then, he followed 2 of the palace guards in charge of receiving guests to the Eternal Music Palace. The 2 guards leading the way obviously recognized who this young noble Ling was, bootlicking him along the way. Young noble Ling, General Ling is now at the Martial Virtue Hall. Does young noble wish to take a look? Why would I want to go there? Find my father to receive a beating? Ling Tian then thought about his father's expression when his father saw him yesterday. If not for the fact that Ling Zhou was too tired, he would have probably served Ling Tian with a round of the family laws. The moment Ling Tian thought about that, he became extremely depressed. I am your son after all. Why do you act like I am your enemy? Hearing this, both the guards began to giggle. Ling Tian walked forward as he asked, before I arrived, which other young nobles arrived? A guard then replied, young noble Yang was the first to arrive. I heard that there was also a young master Nangong who came with him. Young noble Li, young noble Zhou, young noble Liu, the 2 young nobles from the Fu family, young noble Su. The guards slowly listed, naming over more than a dozen of names. Ling Tian rolled his eyes and said, I dare to bet that this is the first time these garbage woke up so early in their life. A bunch of useless things. The guards laughed as they responded in agreement. However, they thought to themselves in their heart, if you lived up to expectations, how would you be so famous? Young noble Ling, the Eternal Music Palace is up ahead. We will not be following young noble Ling in. Young noble, please help yourself. The 2 guards took a bow before taking their leave. Ling Tian responded with a "oh" and took out 2 banknotes. Go get some wine, it's on this young noble. Many thanks, young noble. Just when Ling Tian walked into the Eternal Music Palace, 2 palace maids came forward to welcome him. After walking a few steps, he heard a wave of laughter and commotion from the inside. Ling Tian frowned for a moment as he thought to himself, these people really treat the palace as a brothel? Every one of them are so loud. As he entered the palace, Ling Tian almost suspected that he walked into the wrong place. To his left and right were groups of men all over. As for the distinguished ladies, not a single one of them could be seen. Ling Tian recognized almost every one of them here. They were all the young nobles of the different government officials. If they were to compare the level of silk pants, each and every one of them are all comparable to Ling Tian. Even if there were some who were on a slightly lower level, they weren't too far away from him. They were all extremely excited, spittle flying all around, obviously extremely interested in this gathering of flowers. Some of them even had a lump on their crotch, their sword fully drawn. Even though they had their robes as cover, their heads began to take a peek out. Who knows what they were thinking about? Ling Tian could not help but stop and ask the 2 palace maids, is there a mistake here? Is this a gathering of flowers or gathering of silk pants? Chapter 80, Young Noble Nangong. Amused, both the palace maids began to giggle as they replied, "The princesses and all the young miss are still preparing in the inner hall. They have not come out yet." Ling Tian responded with an "oh" before saying, "Then I will come back later." "Haha, isn't this young noble Ling? I have not seen you for so long, and young noble Ling seems to be even more charming." Just when Ling Tian wanted to leave, a scruffy voice sounded from behind. As Ling Tian looked over, he saw a guy who was dressed in brightly colored clothes talking to him with a smile. While the weather was not warm, he was already gently waving his fan, wanting to look like he was very elegant. However, when coupled with his sleazy and vulgar appearance, he looked extremely bizarre. Cough cough cough, so it was Brother Liu. Ling Tian struggled with the urge to spit on his sleazy appearance as he forced out a smile. This Brother Liu was called Liu Chuanzi. He was the only son of the Chief of Defense, Liu King. It seemed as though he was having the same struggle as Ling Tian, struggling to get married. Ling Tian did not quite understand. In his understanding, the son of an aristocratic family like himself should be the target of all the ladies. Why is it such that no one was interested in him up until now? Can it be possible that the people of this world are not concerned with fame and fortune? But does not seem to be the case either. How would Ling Tian know that before proposing a marriage to his family, the status of both the families must be matched appropriately? How would the small families dare to bridge that social class difference before his first wife was settled? They would only dare to approach after the first wife was confirmed. As for those families of similar status, they would want their daughters to marry into a good family. Thus, it was only natural that they would not consider a silk pants like Ling Tian. As such, an awkward situation like this was created. Liu Chuanzi's voice immediately attracted the eyes of everyone else to the entrance. As they saw that the leading silk pants of the capital had arrived, they all swarmed around to greet him. Only 6 people remained unmoved, and Ling Tian also locked his gaze on the 6 of them. One of them was someone familiar, the young noble of the Yang family, Yang Wei. The 2 behind him were the younger brothers of Yang Wei. To the left of Yang Wei was a handsome man dressed in white robes, looking at Ling Tian with a look of mockery. Beside him was a delicate-looking young man with thick makeup all over. With Ling Tian's eyesight, he was naturally able to tell that she was a female with a single look. Behind them was a tall and sturdy burly man. As Ling Tian looked at the position he was standing, he was sure that the burly man was the guard of the white-robed man. With regards to this white-robed man, Ling Tian was sure that he was definitely the 3rd young master of the Nangong family, Nangongla. Everyone else who came here were all alone, but this brat actually brought a guard and a lady. Ling Tian grunted in his heart, "Since you are so close to the Yang family and displayed such an attitude, it is obvious that you are going to oppose me." Facing an enemy, Ling Tian would never show mercy. "Who is that guy who looks like a dog?" Ling Tian asked with his nose pointed up in the sky. Liu Chuanzi and the rest present were already extremely displeased with the lofty Nangongla. The moment he arrived, he carried with him a proud disposition, ignoring everyone present. It was as though he did not place anyone present in his eyes. The moment they heard Ling Tian speaking with such ill intent, they were elated. "Damn it, while we can't provoke you, someone who can provoke you is finally here." They all began to introduce him to Ling Tian with spices and seasoning added in the introduction. At this moment, Nangongla had already stood up with poise. He smiled to Ling Tian from afar and said, "This must be young noble Ling, right? I have long heard of your famous name. Seeing you today, you do live up to your name indeed. Young noble Ling is indeed a frivolous character." Yang Wei and his brothers did not even bother getting up as Yang Wei said with an eccentric tone, "That's right, the name of young noble Ling had spread far and wide. While this brother-in-law of mine is so far away, he has also heard of you." "Brother-in-law? Confirming the marriage so soon? They are really fast." It seems that the Yang family is also eagerly waiting for this marriage. Looking at the delighted look on Yang Wei's face, he looks as though he is afraid that the world does this not know that this young noble Nan Gong is his brother-in-law. It seems that the Yang family is extremely pleased with this marriage. Ling Tian laughed and took 2 steps forward. Brother-in-law? Ling Tian is indeed ignorant and uninformed. Since when did the famous young noble Nan Gong become the son-in-law of the Yang family? Nan Gongla smiled with elegance. This little brother is here in the sky-bearing empire for this matter. Thanks to the grace of the Yang family, this matter was confirmed last night. Ling Tian responded with a surprised before saying, I heard that the Yang family has 2 beautiful flowers. I wonder which flower brother Nan Gong picked? These words of his were extremely frivolous, making the faces of Yang Wei and his brothers turn ugly. Yang Wei then replied with black lines all over his face, the family head had made the decision to betroth my elder sister to Nan Gongla. Ling Tian then sighed with regret as he said, I see. I wonder why brother Nan Gong is here in the Eternal Music Palace for? Don't tell me you aren't satisfied with the young miss of the Yang family and want to find a concubine here today? At that moment, all of the silk pants behind him began to parrot Ling Tian. This fellow, not only did he marry the young miss of the Yang family without a sign, he actually still came here today. It is obvious that he does not have good intentions. Nan Gongla's face became ugly as the cross-dressing lady frowned and shouted, You with the surname Ling, how is what my second brother here for any of your concern? The moment she shouted, all the young nobles present could immediately tell that she was a lady. They all turned towards her in unison, sizing her up from bottom to top. From the way she said you with the surname Ling, it can be seen just how poor an impression she had of Ling Tian. Ling Tian responded with a "oh" before saying calmly, so it is Miss Nan Gong. No wonder. He purposefully dragged his words, making them sound extremely profound. Nan Gongla looked at his sister with rebuke before responding, This is my sister, Nan Gong Yu. She is still young and does not know her manners. I hope that young noble Ling will not blame here. As for why I am here today, I am only here to see the world a little with a thick skin. Since the identity of Nan Gong Yu was already exposed, it would seem too petty for him to try and conceal it again. Although he was courteous on the surface, the flash of viciousness in his eyes did not escape Ling Tian. It was obvious that he was only concealing his anger in his heart. The burly man behind Nan Gongla had a face full of anger as he glared at Ling Tian. However, this Miss Nan Gong did not have such a good temper. She continued to ask, You of surname Ling, when you said, no wonder, what did you mean by that? Ling Tian burst out into laughter and all of the young nobles who already understood what Ling Tian meant laughed along with him. The face of that Miss Nan Gong turned red immediately. She was an extremely spoiled lady at home, used to being arrogant and bossy. How could she endure being laughed at by so many people? Furthermore, after listening to how Ling Tian was when she was in the Yang family, she could not help but scold, What are you guys laughing about? Shut up. You. Tell me what it means? The last question was being said to Ling Tian. Then, a chuckle sounded from the door. Since young noble Nan Gong is not here to find a concubine and he still brought her sister, then he is definitely here for to choose a husband for Miss Nan Gong. I am 16 years old, extremely charming and not married. I wonder if I can live up to the expectations of Miss Nan Gong? As this duck-like sound sounded, everyone knew who just arrived without even looking. He was the young noble who was part of the 3 great silk pants in the capital, Wang Bo. With just this phrase of his, he lived up to his name of being a silk pants. As everyone turned to look, they saw a person standing by the door wearing a light green silk robe. He even had a large peony flower on his head with a long strand of hair growing on the mole on his cheeks. At this moment, he was twiddling with that hair, looking up and down at Nan Gong Yu with a pair of lecherous eyes, clicking his tongue at the same time. He was 7 feet tall, but not even 100 caddies heavy. coupled with his dressing, he looked like a bamboo pole by the side of the door. Chapter 81, All Swords Drawn. As the young nobles by the side saw that the three great silk pants of the capital was gathered and pitted against each other, they all grew excited. They all knew that of the three young nobles, Wang Bo and Ling Tian were usually in cahoots. Wang Bo's father was the political enemy of Yang Kong. Usually, Yang Wei and his brothers would suffer more losses but would never show any weakness. Now that there they have a powerful supporter, the third young noble of the Nangong family, there will definitely be a good show. Nangong Yu's body trembled for a moment as she jumped in anger, with her voice becoming high-pitched. Despicable scum. Hoodlum. Bad guy. Vulgar. Dirty. Vile. Bastard to the extreme. Fierce. Swift and fierce. Nangong Yu then looked like an angered lioness, with the hair on her body standing up. She then glared at Wang Bo, as though she wanted to eat him up alive. The near 100 young nobles in the main hall began to shrink their necks. When they heard that she was the young miss of the Nangong family, many had the intention of seeking this phoenix. But now that they heard how fluent she was in scolding someone and how she was itching to hurt someone, she obviously wasn't someone kind. They all prayed to Buddha in their hearts. Better not let this lady end up liking me. If I were to marry such a lady back home, how will I be able to handle her? Wang Bo originally had a hand behind his back, with the other hand flapping his fan, trying his best to look extremely elegant. Just when he felt that he was looking elegant and poised, he heard the wave of scoldings. Looking at this cross-dressing and small-built lady, he was dumbfounded on the spot. Cough cough cough. Ling Tian turned around and began to cough. If not, he would probably burst out into laughter. After Nangong Yu taught Wang Bo a lesson, she began to turn her spearhead back at Ling Tian. You of surname Ling, you will regret humiliating this lady today. Nangong Li then looked towards Ling Tian with a chilly appearance. For young noble Ling to humiliate an unmarried lady as such, you have gone a little too far. Ling Tian then acted as though he was angry. Your sister keeps calling me you of surname Ling. I wonder what young noble Nangong has to say about that? Nangong Li then gave a cold laughter. Don't tell me young noble Ling will be so merciless towards a young lady? Ling Tian then twitched his lips as he said, so it seems like it isn't a crime for a lady to kill someone in the southern Jing? Yang Wei then interrupted, Ling Tian, you went too far today. Humiliating the guest of my Yang family, my new brother-in-law, you are looking down on my Yang family. Wang Bo then burst out into laughter. New-in-law? Don't tell me young noble Yang has an old brother-in-law. If that's the case, young noble Nangong, you have really suffered a loss. All the few silk pants who had a good relationship with Ling Tian and Wang Bo burst out into laughter. Nangong Li was finally unable to maintain his demure and well-refined young noble image. His handsome face became contorted as he gave a roar and pounced towards Wang Bo. This person actually dared to insult his fiancée. That was something which cannot be forgiven. Ling Tian then took a step to block him. Young noble Nangong, we are in the sky-bearing imperial palace. Do you want to let both our countries meet each other in war? Nangong Li then took a deep breath, looking at Ling Tian viciously. Ling Tian? This is how your sky-bearing empire receive guests? You can be considered a guest? That's right, why don't you think about who started everything? Haha, what a joke. He does not have the manners of a guest, only remembering that he is a guest after suffering a loss. The Nangong family is only so much. This is the sky-bearing city, not the gold jade city in southern Jing. Young noble Nangong, you seem to have made a mistake. Before Ling Tian could reply, the young nobles behind him all began to let out their comments. The moment Nangong Li arrived, it was as though his eyes were growing on the back of his head and his nose always pointed up to the sky. Following which, his own sister, Nangong Yu, was also so arrogant. Everyone was extremely displeased already, now that they saw them suffering a loss in this war of words. They would naturally not let go of this chance to hit them while they're down. Preposterous! Yang Wei shouted with an enraged face, how unsightly! Preposterous! Ling Tian also shouted. But, he shouted at Yang Wei instead. Following which, he chuckled, Yang Wei, young noble Yang, with just you, it seems that you don't have the rights to say that word. Following which, he said to the people behind him, you guys should not go too far either, take it easy on your words. Didn't you see that young noble Nan Gong is long prepared, even bringing his personal guard? With just all of your weak bones, he will be able to deal with all of you here with a single hand. As Ling Tian said that, everyone all responded in dissatisfaction. Everyone was here alone, on what grounds should he be allowed to bring his guard in? Young noble Nan Gong is really careful. Not to mention coming uninvited, he actually brought a bodyguard to my sky-bearing imperial palace. Don't tell me you're afraid that we will eat you up? That's right, that's right. So many of us are here alone and we didn't even lose a single hair. No, you guys may not know. Young noble Nan Gong may be a scaredy cat unable to take shocks. I see, this makes sense. Brother's observation is so meticulous, this little brother here admires your observation. You're too kind. The next moment, commotion filled the main hall and Nan Gongla's face turned green from anger. A bodyguard which he brought actually became the target of provocation. While this matter did not really follow the rules, people would think that he was afraid of the rest if this matter were to spread. In that instant, he fell into a dilemma. The three brothers of the Yang family also began shouting, arguing with the crowds. All the swords from both sides were drawn as the atmosphere became tense, looking as though it would become a brawl very soon. Ling Tian began to fan the flames all around as he was silently happy. As long as Nan Gongla's guard takes action, this young noble will be able to see through him in an instant. I will also be able to see through your Nan Gong family. The princess arrives. A weird-sounding shout sounded, destroying Ling Tian's plan. Everyone then looked at each other in anger before going back to their seats. After all, none of them was willing to lose their face in front of the princess. Ling Tian shook his head as his playtime came to an end. They could not come earlier or later, coming right at this exact moment to ruin his plans. Ling Tian then gestured to Wang Bo as he whispered into his ears, Brother Wang, the voice of this eunuch really sounds like yours. Wang Bo thought that Ling Tian wanted to tell him a secret. In the end, he burst out into laughter as he heard what Ling Tian said and glared, I think it sounds more like yours. A wave of fragrance then entered and everyone's nose twitched unconsciously. In the pathway from the inner hall, the voices of females talking, bickering or laughing sounded as they walked out gorgeously dressed. Ling Tian sighed in his heart, I feel as though I just entered a brothel. In his memory from his previous life, the brothel keeper would wave her handkerchief as she shouts, ladies, time to receive guests. Then, there would be a bunch of ladies appearing like that. As the ladies streamed out, the tense atmosphere in the Eternal Music Palace was wiped away cleanly. All the lecherous beasts displayed amiable appearances, acting humble and righteous, acting in a dignified manner with an educated manner of speech. They suddenly looked like a group of scholars talking about worldly affairs together. However, their lecherous eyes swept around the bodies of the ladies as their thoughts were not even in their conversations as their responses were completely irreconcilable. Brother Zong, how old are you this year? Ah, yes. That's right. Brother Zhang makes sense. Conversations like these were happening all around as the silk pants enjoyed themselves. As Ling Tian took a look, he realized that there isn't a single person who looked like his target. His target was naturally the little princess of the Yu family. Don't tell me I'm wrong? She didn't come to the sky-bearing empire? Chapter 82, Princess Jiayu. The duo in front dressed in pale yellow robes were Princess Jinfeng and Princess Jiayu respectively. Princess Jinfeng was the daughter of the Empress Yingzhu, while Princess Jiaoyu was the darling of the royal concubine Ling Ran. The emperor favored these two princesses the most, which coincidentally was the two opposing factions. Right now, Princess Jiaoyu was beckoning towards Ling Tian excitedly. Ling Tian pulled a long face as he let out a long sigh, but he had no choice except to walk over. After all, Princess Jiaoyu usually took great care of him. Seeing that he approached her, she leaned beside him and whispered in his ears, "Little brother Tian, do you fancy any one of them? If you feel embarrassed to tell your mother, this sister can help you." As she spoke, her eyes revealed traces of mischievousness. Ling Tian's face got even moodier as he stretched out a finger and gestured around the grand hall. He then replied softly, "Sister Jiaoyu, just with this bunch of ordinary people full of cosmetics, how could this little brother ever fancy them?" Princess Jiaoyu stretched out a slim jade-like finger, harshly rapping it on his head as she said with displeasure, "None of them even catches your eyes? All the beauties in the capital are already here. If this doesn't do, then you can only accept the paddle and get beaten." Ling Tian put on a salivating expression, retorting, "If I really cannot find one, then I can only bother Sister Jiaoyu to fulfill this little brother." Her cheeks flushed red. Princess Jiaoyu shot Ling Tian a hateful look, before saying unhappily, "You only know how to talk nonsense. Why haven't you gone to pick your one true love?" Although Jiaoyu was close to Ling Tian, the thought of bringing up marriage between them had never crossed her mind. Furthermore, with his infamous reputation, even though they were considered related, Princess Jiaoyu definitely would not dare to entrust her lifelong happiness to Ling Tian's type of licentious young noble. Ling Tian opened up his hands, saying, "There really isn't one that catches my eye. How about I just return home?" Princess Jiaoyu never imagined that her maternal cousin's standards would be so high that even those well-groomed and well-brought-up proud daughters of the upperclassmen would not be able to catch his eyes. She could not help but gape while staring at Ling Tian, unable to utter a word for quite a while. Only after a long awkward pause did she finally reply, with dying enthusiasm, "If these people outside cannot catch your eye, then you don't need to go in as well. Those inside will not even spare you a glance. Maybe you should head home." Ling Tian's eyes gleamed as he lowered his voice, "There are more inside?" Princess Jiaoyu only snorted, "Those inside are all females of talent. The reason why they all request to be situated inside the inner halls is because they are unwilling to associate with the licentious silk pants nobles such as you. Those inside are engaged in debates and poetry, calligraphy and painting. If you go in, won't you end up as a laughing stock? You know nuts about any of those." When she finished she sighed, having a headache for this maternal cousin of hers who did not even learn an ounce of the arts. Ling Tian's eyes glowed even more, saying, "Turns out that all the arts associations are actually situated in the inner palace instead. I say, with so much noise on the outside, how can it have any atmosphere of learning and culture?" Princess Jiaoyu sighed, "I would have gone in after dealing with all of you rabble. As for Jin Feng, she is more interested towards lively scenes such as these and thus it would be better for her to stay here." By her words, she totally did not place her half-sister in her eyes at all. Ling Tian chuckled as he tried to placate her, "Sister Jiaoyu, why don't you reveal to me who is inside? From which prestigious families did they come from?" Princess Jiaoyu shot him another glare as she said, "Don't tell me you really want to go in and make a fool out of yourself? Forget it, once you go in, those rabble will also flock in to see, and disturb those refined young ladies. How is that nice? Furthermore, those people do not even want to see you, thus they requested for such an arrangement. Why force them to the edge? Even Jin Feng is of the same idea not to let any of you silk pants in." Ling Tian let out a sigh that seemed to be full of disappointment as he replied, "Sister Jiaoyu, how about you just tell me the people that are inside then? Can't I just get some good fortune for my ears?" He thought to himself that if those inside were that bunch of snobby and arrogant girls from the capital, then he would definitely not even take half a step in. Princess Jiayu did not know whether to laugh or be angry. What use would it be for me to tell you just the names? However, she caved in after Ling Tian's relentless pestering. All right, anyway, you can't possibly recognize who they are just by their names. There's Fengya, the history official's daughter, Zhang Wei from the assistant justice minister, the grand physician Mr. Su's daughter Su Qian, and finally Shen Ruer, the daughter of the palace hall general. The last two are the rights minister's daughter as well as his niece. Will that do? Ling Yan's eyes shone. The rights minister's niece? Sounds unfamiliar. Princess Jiayu laughed. Not just sounds, but also looks unfamiliar. Her body is fantastic, however her face makes one not dare to compliment her. She shook her head at that. Ling Tian smiled to himself. It seemed like the person with the most suspicion was likely to be the rights minister's niece. His eyes swiveled as he suddenly said, "Sister Jiayu, then I'll be going off." Princess Jiayu finally panicked from her heart, grabbing hold of him, saying, "None of them really catches your eyes?" Ling Tian frowned as he shook his head, saying, "I'll just go home and tell mother to look for my uncle, the emperor, to ask him to marry you to me. There's no other choice." As he spoke, he sighed before walking out. Princess Jiayu was truly in a panic. If that jerk really did as he said, then in order to rope in the Ling family, her royal father would most likely agree to such a matter. She could not help but feel muddled. Although she had no ill will towards her cousin, but with such a messed up reputation, how good could he actually be? Could it be that her lifetime happiness was going to be sent to the graves just like that? She grabbed hold of Ling Tian's clothing and dragged him back, pleading, "Little brother Tian, why not you look more closely and see if you can find one that you fancy?" Ling Tian merely snorted, "With just these? I see them 7 to 8 times a day, how can I still not discover anything? Since you don't allow me to go in and find myself a wife, then you just make the preparations to be married into the Ling family." As he spoke, he suddenly leaned in with a smile on his face, lightly whispering, "I've actually admired Sister Jiayu for a long time already." "Go and die." Jiayu fumed and kicked Ling Yan's shin viciously. The first time she got confessed to, was actually from her licentious maternal cousin. She could not help but feel angry yet embarrassed. Ling Tian screamed out in pain, and prepared to bid his farewell. Jiayu however blocked him again, and this time with a sweet smile, saying, "Little brother Tian." Her voice overflowing with honeyed loveliness. Ling Tian's body simultaneously broke out in cold sweat as he laughed dryly. "Is there a problem, Sister Jiayu? If you got nothing else for me, then this little brother here will return home to ask my mother to propose this marriage on my behalf." Seeing how Ling Tian continued to haggle on this matter, refusing to let it rest, Jiayu could only grit her teeth in anger, almost flipping out. She decided to restrain herself as she snorted, "You only want to have a peek inside the inner palace hall. I can handle that and let you in. This time, after I let you in, you must promise that whether or not you see anyone you fancy, you cannot have any more thoughts about me." Ling Tian let out a satisfied smile, nodding his head like a hen pecking for food. "That goes without saying." After hesitating for a split second, Princess Jiayu then continued, "Only you are allowed, not one more can go with you." Ling Tian nodded as he thought to himself, "Even if someone wanted to go in, I would also throw him out. Such an important plan, how could I afford to be negligent?" Princess Jiayu moved closer to his ears and whispered, "For the time being, you pretend to leave. Wait at the palace doors, I'll ask a palace maid to escort you from the back door." Hey, the imperial palace actually has a back door. Ling Tian was secretly amazed, however he loudly said, "Disappointment. What an absolute disappointment. If I knew I would have met with something like this noble might as well have gone to the heavenly fragrant pavilion for a couple of cups. Time to go, this place is too noisy." All the silk pants looked at each other, unsure of what curse this young noble was inflicted with this time. Wang Bo made a bitter face. Brother Ling, there are 3 days and you want to leave on the first day? Can't you stay here to accompany your brothers? He was amidst a cluster of blooming flowers, feeling the touch of spring, but upon seeing that Ling Tian wanted to leave, he could not help but urge him. Ling Tian huffily spoke, seeing that surnamed Yang, I've already lost all interest. Goodbye. Yang Wei poked his head out among the mass of powder that was the females. Don't worry Ling Tian, I also feel disgusted when seeing you. Ling Yan Wolf whistled loudly, the sound echoing across. Upon seeing all attention directed to him, he then heartily laughed. You were impotent from the start, whether you see me or not doesn't really help your cause. Amidst the great roar of laughter that followed, Ling Tian ran out like the wind, not bothering to wait for Yang Wei's reply. When he reached the palace doors, a petite figure suddenly blocked his route. It turned out to be Nan Gongyu. One only saw her grit her teeth and say, surnamed Ling, the shame and humiliation you've brought onto this lady today, I'll return it to you double. Ling Tian merely laughed coldly, without a care at all. He pushed her away and continued walking out. Let alone a Nan Gongyu, even the entire Nan Gong family would not be placed in his eyes. Seeing Ling Tian's fading silhouette, Nan Gongyu bore an ashen face, her eyes looking as though fire could burst out from them. Chapter 83, Making Friends Through Painting. Translator, Chachu. Turn editor, Sal. Ling Tian followed the palace maid for a detour, for an estimated 3 to 4 miles before he finally saw the copper peacock weather vane of the Eternal Music Palace. A small door was there. Most likely, this was used by the eunuchs and palace maids to enter and exit the palace to attend to their own private matters. The maid pointed towards a direction after bringing him in, and hurriedly left. Ling Tian did not bother to be polite, and immediately walked proudly towards the inner courtyard there. For the first time in his life, Ling Tian turned on his spiritual sense before he even reached his target. He wanted to know if the niece of the rights minister was the little princess of the Yu family. If she was the one, there would be experts secretly guarding her for sure. If he did not spot any arranged experts, then this would mean that the niece was not the princess he was looking for. If that was the case, there was no point in Ling Tian going in. He was nearing the inner courtyard, and Ling Tian, focusing all his spiritual sense to his ears, was able to faintly hear voices, as well as smelling the slight fragrance of silk. Another 10 steps forward, and he stepped into the inner courtyard. Within the green leaves and red blossoms, one could clearly see the conspicuous figures of lithe bodies moving around. Ling Tian wore a faint smile on his face, as he had already spotted his targets. Those two had reserved auras, but were unable to escape his spiritual sense. Being able to withdraw their aura, those two were undoubtedly experts. However, this sort of standard and at this stage, although they had the qualifications to make Ling Tian raise his eyebrows, they could not even enter his eyes. Ling Yan weighed his options in his heart. Among his followers, even Ling Chen would be able to easily break the combined forces of both the guards. Other than Ling Jian, Ling Chen, and Ling Qi, the rest such as the Blood Iron warriors would only be average, and those in the weaker spectrum would even need to combine forces to deal with one of those experts. With the two guards here, Ling Tian could almost confidently say that the niece of the rights minister was actually the little princess of the Yu family. Most likely, the third aura, which was a little weaker yet even more reserved, would be the little princess. Ling Tian smiled to himself, before directly walking towards the direction of the trio. Right now, Ling Tian had already kept all his internal energy with the capabilities of those three, although Ling Tian was sure that they would not be able to discover his aura he was releasing. Prolonged usage of it would exhaust his inner chi. Best to save whenever he could. Surrounded by layers of green leaves was a pristine jade tabletop. In front of it was a small pool with a strange-looking bluff on it, surrounded by azure jade. The top of the bluff was scattered with a few stalks of grass and flowers. Amongst the azure jade swam a school of red-colored fishes, and beside the pool were a few stalks of willows, gently dancing with the breeze. Right now, seated at the jade tabletop, with a pristine piece of paper in front of her, a young lady in white was bent over, with her brush angled as though ready to write or draw something. From Ling Tian's point of view, he could not see her facial features. However, from that raven-colored hair of hers, sharply angled shoulders, and her slim waist which seemed to be able to fit into one hand, one could conclude that even if she did not look good, she would not be too bad as well. The natural refined and elegant charm she was exuding as well was seldom seen by Ling Tian in this life. It was a feeling that could be put into words, ephemeral and yet concrete. One could feel it yet not see it, but know that it existed. In that moment, Ling Tian only had two words in his heart: natural grace. Eyeing the girl in front of him, although he could not see her face, he already felt that this girl could not be brushed off with a simple charm word, but rather a natural grace would be closer for the description, albeit barely being able to describe her. In just one look, Ling Tian suddenly felt a burning interest towards the girl who was stooped over, engrossed in painting. This sort of feeling, from his past life till now, was the first. To think that such a feeling came from merely her back view. Shaking his head, Ling Tian could not believe that he could have this sort of feelings just from a look. Behind the young lass stood three women. Two of them were already past their prime, one with graying hair and another around 40 years of age. The third was similar to the artist, a young and pretty lass. However, Ling Tian could not recognize her and deduced that she would probably be the daughter of the rights minister. The moment Ling Tian stepped out of the alleyway, the two middle-aged women immediately turned to look at him, both eyes seeming to shoot electricity towards him. Ling Tian timed it perfectly, letting out a blank stare in shock. Then, he nodded and smiled before walking slowly over. Because this was the imperial palace, those who could step in here were definitely royalty. This set of special circumstances led the two women to believe that Ling Tian was probably a royal prince. After hesitating, they opened up a path for him. The artist in question did not even lift her head, completely unaware of the presence of Ling Tian. Ling Tian stilled his breath before slowly walking over the jade tabletop, casting his eyes onto the painting. The pristine white paper was almost fully filled. What was drawn was the pavilions and halls in front of her, even the bluff and the pool was vividly portrayed on it. Right now, the lass was in the process of drawing the willows dancing in the breeze. However, the dancing of the willows in the spring breeze was a faintly discernible realm. The hardest job as the artist was to capture this sort of ethereal feeling. The lass seemed to be struggling, her brows furrowed and unable to fully commit her brush. As Ling Tian scrutinized the work, he realized that while the lass's brush skills were adept, they were lacking a sort of life to them. Though what she was drawing was seemingly realistic, they were not lifelike at all. Although he knew that the paintings of this world were all as such, but Ling Tian could not help but let out a soft sigh. Could it be that even such a soul-stirring girl like her only had such a standard? Ling Tian's unintentional sigh alarmed the two ladies, one the artist and the other the observer. Both of them involuntarily lifted their heads to look. What surprised Ling Tian the most was that the lass with the soul-stirring charisma actually bore a suntanned face. Although it wasn't ugly, she definitely could not be termed as a beauty. Only that pair of elegant and witty yet apathetic pair of pupils glistened bright and dazzlingly. Ling Tian took in her gentle as jade looks, with that clean white yet lofty and tender waist, as well as that snow-white half-covered neck, and could not help but lift up the corner of his lips in a smile, thinking, looks like this lass concealed her appearance. The two females suddenly saw that, in this place which the princess resided and where all males were prohibited, there was an exceedingly handsome young noble all of a sudden. He had brows sharp as swords and eyes bright as stars. Other than being surprised, they immediately realized that, other than a member of royalty, how else would a male be able to enter into this place? The artist slightly inclined her head as a form of greeting, saying, "A moment ago, I heard that young noble's sigh contained traces of regret. May I ask why is that so?" She actually did not even bother with Ling Tian's identity, and immediately jumped to the main topic. Of course, she was afraid that if his identity was made known, all of those etiquette from meeting royalty would be troublesome. Thus, she might as well take it as a coincidental meeting for strangers, and would part ways after a while, saving her the trouble. Ling Tian could not help but praise her wits. Since she did not want to bring it up, Ling Tian would naturally happily comply. He witnessed how she spoke, as though talking to a longtime friend, and could not see a girl's airs about her, her speech being natural and unrestrained. Ling Tian lightly smiled and said, "It is of no consequence. It was just that upon seeing this lady's painting, no matter the wielding of your brush, the usage of the ink as well as the brush strokes, all have the bearing of a grand master." This one could not help but feel admiration. Both of the ladies' eyes lit up, and the artist asked, "If that's the case, then why did young noble have so much regret in your sigh?"